Hey everybody. Okay, today we're going to continue with learning a little bit more about games. So we're going to do sort of what we did the last day. We're just going to make it a little bit more advanced. Okay, so here we have it. We're going to start first off with a forever loop. Okay, so we can get rid of that. And if you don't have one of these on your screen, well, if you just remember, it's just under the basic. And then down here, that's forever. Okay, so we're going to start with this. And the first thing we want to do is we're going to make 3 variables. Okay, and the first one we're going to call is score. Yeah, and the second one we're going to call it game on. Okay, and the final one we're just going to call frog. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a little game, and basically you're like a frog. It's sort of like an old Frogger game, and you'll jump across here, and there are going to be cars that are going to come down here at various things, and you just have to avoid getting squished. Okay, so you're going to be the frog. And we'll just, so we have our little forever here, and we've done that, and we've set our variables. So the first thing, we've made all these variables, but we haven't set them as anything. So we have to pull out this set, and we have to tell the computer or the program what they are. So the first one we made was the score, wasn't it? So this is going to set the score to 0. So that's perfect, because that's, you generally want to start your score at 0, don't you? And this not only tells it a number, but it also tells it that score is a number. And then you can do the normal number things with it once you've told it this. So that's the score. So the next one we did was the game on, wasn't it? So we'll pop that from the drop down menu. Set game on. Now this is going to be whether the game is in play or not. So you're either playing or you're not. So this is either a true or a false statement. And so in this loop we're going to say when the game is on. So if you look in logic, down at the bottom we have Boolean. I don't know if you remember us doing that, but this is a true or false, so it's like a yes or no. And so this is just, now we're going to set the game on. We're going to say that the game on is true, so the game is actually happening once it gets to this. And our final variable was our frog, wasn't it? So we're going to set our frog, and what we want this to be a sprite. Like we had something that we can move. So if we go down in advanced, you'll see here the game. And then we're going to have create sprite at, and we're going to put that in there. Okay, so if you remember how this went, these are our dots. So this is the 0, 0 up in this top left corner, and this is the 4, 4. And we wanted to start at this bottom here. So your x's would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Or sorry, your y's would be 4, and your x's would be 0, 1, 2. So it's 2 on the x and 4 on the y. You should see that should jump down there now. There we go. Okay, perfect. So now we want to know, well, this is going to be the loop for the game, so we're going to have to put in a loop here. We want to know when the game is playing. So if we click on this loop, there's a while here. And we'll put this in here, and we're going to need a comparison in here. I'm going to explain all this in a second. So our logic, if we go down, here's a comparison statement. And I'm just going to put that in there. So basically, this is a while loop, and this will keep going. Whatever is in here, as long as what we have in here is true, whatever we put inside here will keep playing. It'll keep running through again and again. So because this says while 0 is equal to 0, and that's always going to happen, if we put in a bit of code in here, it would just keep going forever and ever and ever. It wouldn't stop. But we're going to want it to stop at some stage. So what we're going to do is we want this to keep running as long as the game is playing. So what we do here is we're going to look, and we've got our variables. And we made this game on, didn't we? And so if I put that into that little loop there, and then, well, 0, it doesn't make sense because game on is either true or false. And we want true. So again, in our logic, here's our true, and I'm going to stick that in. So now this says while the game on is true. So that means basically while we're playing the game, this is going to go on and on. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a pause in here. And then this is from the basic. And we'll stick that in here. So basically this little loop is just going to keep checking if we're playing the game. That's it. And so it'll run through our code until it gets to this. And as long as we're still playing our game, it's not going to go any further than this. But then as soon as the game is over, when the game is not true, so it's false, we'll have to put in later, we want to jump out. And well, what's it going to do there? Well, we want it to update the score because the game will be over. And so if we look down in game, we have change score by 1. We're going to put that in there, but it's not going to be by 1. We're going to want it to be whatever score we got in our game. So we've invented something, or we created a variable called score. We'll use that again. Okay, so now whatever score we've got in our game, well, it's going to change the score by that. And this is a different score that it saves. So it has loads of stuff already on this. It makes things very easy for us. And then, well, after that, after we change the score, well, it's going to be a game over, isn't it? So if we look down a game, there's a game over. And this game over is very helpful because it allows us to reset the game by pressing A and B together. So this already has quite a bit of a code written into this little block. Okay, so this is just going to, basically this is going to do, it's going to start up our few things on our game, and it's going to keep checking if the game is being played, and then as soon as the game is not being played, so as soon as we lose, it'll update our score for whatever we got, and it'll just say game over, and allow us to restart. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is move our little sprite. So we're going to do the same as we did the last time, if you remember. So we wanted to move left with A and right with B. So again, we'll just click our input, and these are buttons, on button A pressed. Perfect, and we'll stick that, we'll stick it there. Okay, so we can still see all of that. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to change our sprite position to the left, and that's going to be by a -1. It's sprite position in the X. So if we look down game, and we have, here's our sprite, change X by 1. That's perfect, but 1 means it goes that way, and we're doing A, so we want it to go left. So all we have to do is change it to -1. Now, this has come up as a little thing here, and that's because we don't have anything called sprite. That's not what we called it. Can you remember what we called our sprite? We called it the frog. So from the drop-down menu, you'll see if I pick frog, that little warning symbol will go away. Yeah. So now when we press the button A, it should change our X, which is our bottom, by -1. And there we go, but once we're there, we can't do anything because we haven't made B yet. So again, we can just do our copy and paste our duplicate. If you right click onto this, oops, and duplicate, I'll stick that up here. You can see it's gone a strange color because we already told it what to do at A. So until we pick a new button, it's going to stay that strange color. And now we've picked B, so now it's valid again. But this time, this is going to the left and we want it to go to the right, so we're just going to change that to 1. And there we go. So now we should be able to move left and right, all we want. Okay. So now what we need to write the code for is the cars that are going to come and squash us. So for these, we're going to use another forever loop. Okay, so if we go back up to the start, and don't worry, we only have to make the code for one of these, and then it just repeats over and over. Okay, so the first thing we're actually going to put in is a little pause, because it actually just helps it to run a little bit smoother. This is just under basic. You don't really need that, but it helps. Okay, and we're going to want to create a bunch of variables. Okay, and these are going to be the cars, so there's going to have to be 5, one for each row, so I'm just going to call them 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so I've just made a car 0. Here's a car 1. Make another one. Car 2. Car 3. And car 4. Okay, so that'll be 0 will be here, 1 will be there, 2 will be there, 3 will be there, and 4 will be there. Okay, and so once we've made those variables, but we haven't set them again, so we better do that. And what are we going to do? Look down here, and we're going to have a set. We'll put that in there, but we're talking about car 0 first. Okay, well, what do we want car 0 to be? Well, we want it to be a sprite, like this. And we do the same idea, so I'm going to create a sprite from our games function. And we're going to be create sprite at. And we just put that in there. And this is going to drop it right in the middle, but what we wanted is to be in this top left, so that's just going to be 0, 0. This is why it's conveniently called car 0. Okay, and now it'll be up in the top left corner. Now, what we want is we don't want this to be too predictable as to when it moves. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to add, oops, sorry, not that one. We're going to add a pause in here from the basic. We get a pause. Okay, now if I keep doing this, if I did this the same, then all the cars would just move at exactly the same time. So I want to add a bit of unpredictability in here for how long it stays up there until it starts moving. And we can do that using the math. We want a random number. So if I look down here in the maths, it has pick random. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. Okay, and this is going to be a pause for milliseconds. So if I say 0, then I'm going to put in here 5,000 milliseconds. So it's going to pick randomly one of these, and then as soon as that pause goes, it'll be an unusual time. We won't know how quick it goes before it starts moving, and that's what we want. We don't want to be able to predict it. Okay, so that'll be it starting moving, and now we're going to have a while. We're going to put this in, and so what we want to have here is while the car keeps moving, or while the game is on. So if you look, we have it up here. We can actually just copy this whole piece here if you want. You can right click and duplicate it, or you can do exactly what we did before and go through, but this is what I want to have. So again, now while the game is on, oops, I'm going to want it to do everything in this loop. Okay, and let's go into our logic. So we're going to have if and else is what I'm going to do, or we'll just start with an if anyway. We'll put that if. So this is as soon as we're playing the game, we're going to want it to go through here. Okay, and the first thing we want then in here is we're going to want another bit, another logic statement, because or a comparison statement. We always sort of want them if we have an if. So I'm just going to pull out a comparison statement there and put it in. And what we want to know is we want to have, well, if this car 0, if it's down at the bottom, then it's going to have to go back to the top, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to look at this. Okay, so if where's our variable? If car 0, and it has its position, oops, sorry, I shouldn't have done that, to get rid of that. We want car 0's position. So if we look down here, and we use the same, this sprite is X. So this basically is asking what position our car is, and of course we didn't call it sprite, did we? We called it car 0. Yeah, and so if that's position, but we want it to be Y because it's not going to be moving anywhere, and X is just going to be moving up and down. Well, it's going to be moving down. So if it's Y is equal to 4, that means it must be down at the bottom. Then everything's going to happen, because if it's down here, well, we either want it to go up to the start again, don't we? Or else it's going to be squishing our frog. They're the only two options. So once it's in here, we're going to want now another loop inside this, and these are called nested loops, and they can get a little bit tricky. So inside that we're going to have another if or else. Okay, so what we want here is we want to find out, well, that could be, there's two options now. It could be down here and we mightn't be there, and in which case we want to go to the start, or it could squish our poor little frog. And so we're going to see if it's squishing our frog. So the first thing we're going to look is we're going to put down, if we look in our games, is sprite touching? This is exactly what we want. So if we pull that out, we stick it in there, and again we didn't call it sprite, did we? We called it car 0. If car 0 is touching, and what if it's touching? If it's touching, well, our frog, and if we remember that, our variables down here are frog. So if car 0 is touching our frog, well, that means our frog is squished, doesn't it? And then if we remember what we had in variables, so that means what? Well, that means the game's over. So if we look in our variables, we'll pull out this set again. Now we can set our game on to, instead of 0, it'll be false, won't it? Now, false. Okay, so if car 0, if it comes down here, and if it's squishing our frog, well, that means the game is just going to be over. And then if I click this little plus down here, it's going to give me another option. Click that. There we go. Because there's two options here. One, it could be squishing our frog, or the other one is our frog isn't there and we want it to go back to the start. And so all we're going to have now is what are we doing? Sorry, we're going to have we want to reset our car up here. Now we've already had this position for this, so we'll do it back the long way. Sure. If we look in this game now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set our car position. Okay, so if we look down here, there's a sprite set x to 0. Now what we want is we want to put its y, we want it to go back up here. So again, we're not calling it sprite, we call it car 0. And this, we're not talking about x's, we're talking about y's. And that's it, we want to set it back to 0. So it's going to keep coming down, and then if it's here, it's either going to squash us and the game's going to be over, or it's going to jump back up to the start. And again, we're going to put in another random pause in there. Okay, duplicate that whole thing, and we're going to stick that in there. Now, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to increase our score, because if we've avoided one of these cars, well, that means we should give our score, we should add +1. So if we went back into variables again here, and if we look, this is change here, we're going to put that underneath. And what we want to do is we want to change our score by 1. Okay, so every time we miss a car, it'll increase our score. Okay, so let's see now, and what else? Okay, so this is all what we've done here. Is this is all that if we're down at the bottom and we've squished them, but we haven't actually made our way down the bottom yet. So if we look at this, there's two little pluses here, and if we pick this bottom one and we want to click that, and it's going to pop out. So this is one of the options. Well, we could be down here, and if we're down here, we're either squishing our little frog or we're not. But we mightn't be down there. So if we're not down there, well, we want to take a step closer, don't we? And then, so all we need to put in here is that we need to move our car down 1. So if we look again in our game, and we're going to change the car's position. Where is it? Yep, so we're going to have this again, like what we had there. We're going to change its y by 1, and that has it all. Now, again, we don't call it sprite or car 0. Okay, and we're going to change, we don't want its x, we want its y by 1. Okay, so if we look, I'm just going to add a little pause in there at the bottom of 500, so it has definitely a little bit of a break. So that's just a half a second pause. Okay, and that should be working. You can see now that there's one little one here, and it gets down there, it starts, and we don't know when it's going to come. This is the random bit, so it might start moving, and all we have to do is keep avoiding that. And if we hit it, well, then it'll be game over. If we press A and B, we'll restart the game. So we've done that now. We're pretty much finished. So once we've done it for one, we can do it. We can just duplicate it all for others. There's that set of it again. So if we just right click on this whole forever loop and duplicate it, well, that's going to make us a second one. And we're going to pull that over here. Okay, now this makes an exact duplicate, which is not what we want. So if we look in here, we have a car 0, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change that for car 1 every time, and each time we're going to want to move its position over 1. So that sprite is going to be x. Well, we want our x to be 1 for this one, don't we? Because this is car 1. And again, then we're going to have to change this for car 1, and this one for car 1, And this one. Oops. And this one. Okay, and that should be that. And then you can see now that both of them will be going. Okay, and there's the random pause. Okay, so that works perfectly. So now we just need to do that for the other 3 cars. And we do exactly the same. Right click on forever, duplicate. And then again, go through all of this. So that'll be car 2 this time. Our position will be 2. And again, car 2, car 2, car 2. And again, we'll duplicate that then. So there we have all 3 cars. And again, you can just continue this for the last 2 cars. So there should be a car. Oh, I must have missed one, did I? Car 0, car 1, car 2. Oh yeah, the last 2. So car 3 and car 4. And you can see the same. So we just need to change each of these values and change each of their initial starting positions. And that should be your little game ready. We'll just do car 3. And the final one of that. Okay, so I've left one blank there, so I won't just die every few seconds. But that's it, so that's your little game. And then they'll start moving. Oh. Those ones are having quite a break up at the top. Because that's a random position, or maybe it's moving, is it? Have I missed a number? Oh look, I missed one down there. That's why it's not going. Okay, but there, that should be, you continue that for the final car, or duplicate that and copy that, and it should all work. If you have any questions, just give me a shout.